To understand why this is such a critical issue, it is necessary to analyze the historical patterns of idol management in South Korea, the global shift in fan influence, and the unique positioning Jungkook holds in both markets. The discussion cannot be limited to music charts or solo album achievements, because the heart of the matter lies in structural power, branding dominance, and the economics of celebrity management in the 20th century. The K-pop system was built on a foundation of rigorous control. Entertainment companies like SM, YG, JYP, and HYBE developed models that shaped idols' careers from the very beginning, often starting with trainee programs that could last for years. These programs not only refined idol skills, but also crafted their public personas. Once an idol debuted, their career was strategically managed, with companies dictating everything from concept choices to public appearances. This system ensured that the company retained maximum control, while the idols themselves became both cultural products and brand ambassadors. For most idols, this arrangement worked because their individual power was relatively limited. Their success was tied to the collective identity of the group, and companies relied on this dynamic to protect their investments. Jungkook, however, complicates this model. While he rose to fame as the youngest member of BTS, his trajectory has transcended traditional group-oriented boundaries. His personal brand has become so influential that it often surpasses not only his group identity, but also the corporate branding of HYBE itself. This creates a fundamental imbalance. HYBE relies heavily on Jungkook's global recognition, but Jungkook's brand has reached a level where it can survive, even thrive, without corporate scaffolding. Another key factor in this struggle is the shifting role of fans in the global music ecosystem. Unlike in earlier eras, where corporations controlled nearly all narratives about idols, today's fans play an active role in shaping public perception. Social media platforms such as Twitter, X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have decentralized the flow of information, giving fans the ability to amplify messages, defend idols, or even challenge corporations. In Jungkook's case, this fan-driven ecosystem has become a double-edged sword for HYBE. On the one hand, fans have propelled his influence into global markets, ensuring his presence dominates digital spaces. On the other hand, these same fans are quick to criticize HYBE whenever there is a perceived mishandling of his career. This creates a dynamic where Jungkook's name holds more stability and protection than the corporation managing him. For HYBE, this is a source of unease. Corporations traditionally prefer to maintain centralized control over messaging, yet Jungkook's fan base demonstrates an ability to act independently, often overwhelming HYBE's official narratives. This independent ecosystem strengthens Jungkook's position but undermines HYBE's authority. The fear for HYBE is that if Jungkook were to distance himself further, fans would continue supporting him directly, potentially bypassing the company entirely. From a commercial perspective, Jungkook represents one of HYBE's most valuable assets. His global reach extends far beyond music, influencing fashion, luxury branding, and consumer culture. Brands like Calvin Klein have already demonstrated the immense economic impact of partnering with him, with measurable spikes in sales and engagement following his campaigns. This dependency reveals the scale of HYBE's fear. If Jungkook asserts more independence, the company risks losing not only a performer, but also a global marketing powerhouse. While HYBE manages other successful artists and projects, none have achieved the singular cross-market dominance Jungkook represents. His appeal bridges East and West, music and fashion, digital platforms, and live performance. In other words, Jungkook is not just another artist in HYBE's roster, He is arguably the cornerstone of the company's international relevance. Losing influence over Jungkook would mean HYBE faces a significant risk in brand devaluation. Their negotiations with sponsors, investors, and media entities are strengthened by Jungkook's global weight. Should that weight shift to a more independent model, HYBE's leverage would shrink, forcing them to compete in markets they currently dominate through association with him. There are parallels in Western entertainment history that shed light on HYBE's current predicament. For instance, the music industry has repeatedly seen artists break free from corporate control once their personal brands became more powerful than the companies behind them. Artists such as Michael Jackson, Beyoncé, and Taylor Swift redefined how much control an individual could exert over their career, often at the expense of their record label's dominance. What distinguishes Jungkook's situation is the cultural context of K-pop, where corporate control has historically been far more rigid. If Jungkook were to fully establish his independence, it would not only shift the balance within HYBE, but potentially redefine industry norms in South Korea. Other idols may see his trajectory as a blueprint, leading to a domino effect where corporations must negotiate rather than dictate careers. This represents a seismic cultural shift, one that HYBE may be unprepared to handle. The company faces a strategic dilemma. Granting Jungkook more independence may protect his loyalty and long-term partnership, but it also sets a precedent for other artists. On the other hand, exerting tighter control risks alienating Jungkook and, by extension, his fanbase. In either scenario, HYBE's traditional position of power is weakened. Their biggest fear is not simply about one artist leaving, it is about the larger structural consequences of that departure. If Jungkook demonstrates that independence can be equally or more successful than corporate management, it could destabilize HYBE's entire model. Investors might question the sustainability of idol management contracts, while fans may increasingly demand transparency and autonomy for their favorites. The phrase "breaking free" in Jungkook's context carries symbolic weight. It does not necessarily mean severing ties with HYBE completely. Instead, it represents a broader shift in the balance of power. Whether through creative independence, expanded global collaborations, or direct fan engagement, Jungkook's moves highlight the possibility of a future where artists are less dependent on corporate structures. For HYBE, this is their biggest fear revealed, losing control over the very system that made them dominant. The idol system thrives on predictability, consistency, and corporate authority. Jungkook embodies the opposite: unpredictable global influence, fan-driven power, and a brand that exceeds corporate boundaries. In this sense, the conversation is not about whether Jungkook will release another album or sign a different endorsement. It is about how his unique position challenges the foundation of corporate control in K-pop. His independence forces HYBE to confront a reality where they may no longer be the ultimate decision-makers. Instead, they may find themselves negotiating with an individual who holds equal or greater cultural capital. The fear here is systemic. Jungkook represents not only cultural influence, but also economic capital. Every time his name trends globally without HYBE's orchestration, it demonstrates the viability of his independent economic value. For HYBE, this translates into a loss of monopoly brands and industries could recognize that access to Jungkook does not strictly require corporate approval. Another aspect of this dynamic lies in media framing. Korean media has historically operated within structures shaped by corporate influence, where companies can manage reputations and guide narratives. International media, however, is less bound to these dynamics. Outlets in the US, Europe, and beyond often frame Jungkook as an individual celebrity rather than as HYBE's artist. This difference creates tension. If the narrative of Jungkook shifts globally toward independence, HYBE's role becomes increasingly invisible. The company's ability to claim ownership over his image and career weakens as independent narratives dominate. For HYBE, whose business model depends heavily on branding their artists as inseparable from the corporation, this presents a significant loss of visibility and control. Looking at global entertainment, there are precedents where companies lost cultural monopoly over their stars. Hollywood studios in the early 20th century once controlled actors under restrictive contracts. But over time, figures like Marilyn Monroe and Marlon Brando shifted the balance of power by asserting individuality, forcing the industry to adapt. Similarly, in the music industry, artists such as Prince and Taylor Swift redefined control over their works, challenging corporate monopolies. Jungkook's situation mirrors these historical shifts, with one key difference. His rise occurs in a hyper-globalized, digital-first era. The speed and scale of his influence, measured in millions of interactions within minutes, accelerates the erosion of corporate monopoly. What took decades in Hollywood or Western music can unfold much faster in today's interconnected cultural economy. The structural risk for HYBE is not limited to reputation, but extends to their financial model. HYBE is not a small agency. It is a publicly traded entertainment conglomerate whose valuation depends heavily on the global presence of its leading artists. Jungkook, as a central figure in that portfolio, represents stability and investor confidence. If investors begin to perceive that Jungkook's influence is increasingly independent of HYBE's orchestration, questions about the sustainability of HYBE's control model may arise. This could create market volatility, especially since HYBE's stock and strategic positioning rely heavily on its ability to market itself as the architect of global talent. Losing monopoly over Jungkook challenges this narrative. Fans complicate this further by functioning as global gatekeepers. International fans often emphasize Jungkook's individuality, amplifying his achievements as his own rather than attributing them to corporate strategy. While HYBE benefits from this global amplification, they also face diminishing returns on their branding monopoly. Every time Jungkook's name trends worldwide due to fan-driven campaigns, HYBE's role is marginalized. The company cannot claim to orchestrate these movements. Instead, they must acknowledge that Jungkook's global reputation is maintained independently. This reality contrasts with the traditional idol model, where the corporation controlled almost every fan interaction. At its core, HYBE's fear of losing cultural monopoly over Jungkook is also symbolic. For decades, the K-pop system has relied on tightly managed structures that ensured idols remained tied to their companies. If Jungkook demonstrates that global independence is not only possible but also more powerful, it destabilizes the blueprint of corporate dominance. Other idols and their fans may begin demanding similar autonomy. If that happens, HYBE's ability to function as a cultural monopoly weakens. Their reputation as the definitive gatekeeper of global K-pop success could be fractured by a single example of independence. Ironically, HYBE's own efforts have contributed to this fear. By positioning Jungkook and BTS as global leaders, the company opened doors to markets they cannot fully control. They built the infrastructure for international recognition. But in doing so, they created a figure whose global appeal could outgrow their influence. This paradox, where success breeds independence, defines the tension at the heart of HYBE's fear. Without global expansion, Jungkook's influence would remain tethered to HYBE's structures. With it, he becomes a global force whose autonomy challenges the very system that nurtured him. Ultimately, HYBE's fear of losing cultural monopoly is not irrational. It is rooted in the recognition that Jungkook's global brand is uniquely positioned to function without heavy corporate mediation. His reach is fueled by decentralized platforms, international media, and direct fan engagement systems that no single company can fully control. For HYBE, this means their traditional strengths, corporate structure, centralized management, and media orchestration may no longer guarantee dominance. Instead, they face a reality where their most valuable asset could redefine the rules of the industry in real time. The biggest fear revealed here is not only that Jungkook could break free, but that his independence could demonstrate to the entire industry that corporate monopoly is no longer a necessity in the global age. For HYBE, whose rise was built on the very foundation of centralized control, this represents a profound structural vulnerability.